I find that a lot of patients benefit from a reorientation of their efforts towards trying to achieve a healthy posture and a healthier spine. The first part of the process that I like to introduce to people has to do with the idea that our stomach muscles won't ever do anything unless we ask them to. Because of the way they're connected to our brain, they tend to be underactive, and they will go into a state of pseudo-paralysis, is in fact what they call it in the textbook, pseudo-paresis, if we're not telling them to do something. On the other hand, the back muscles have a tendency to get much, much too tight. And they do that because they have a rich connection to parts of the brain that are constantly telling them what to do without us having to participate in that below the level of our consciousness. Those are the muscles that get too tight, and those are the muscles that are made up of primarily slow twitch muscle fibers. If we cooked you like a chicken, they would be dark meat. And the stomach muscles that tend to get too lazy are white meat or fast twitch muscle fibers. Then there's a second piece of information that's very important in order to understanding how to establish normal, healthy posture in a neutral spine. That is, when one muscle activates by itself, if the brain tells a muscle to activate on its own, the muscle's opposing partner on the opposite side of that relevant bone or joint will automatically turn into marshmallow. And this is called the reciprocal inhibitory reflex. And the stomach muscles and these way too tight back muscles that cause so many problems have the same dynamic relationship where if one can activate all by itself, the other one will turn into marshmallow. The problem is the brain can override that relaxing signal by telling both of the muscles to engage at the same time. And in that case, it develops into what we call an isometric contraction, where both of these opposing muscles are firing at the same time. Nothing moves, and in fact, all the relevant bones and joints get much, much too tight, or in the core, they'll tend to get way too tight. It compresses the spine like an accordion when that happens here. So the take-home point is, if you can learn how to very, very gently, softly bring in your belly button, ever so slightly, without trying to create a girdle around your entire spine, without engaging your gluteal muscles, or your tight low back muscles, or your hip flexors. All of those typically too tight, low back, dark meat muscles will turn into marshmallow, allowing the spine to lengthen, allowing the breath to move through the spine, allowing for an improvement in circulation for all the associated cells that, again, have a tendency to get achy and tight in a way that can also create dysfunction in other organ systems in the area. So to lengthen and soften those tissues, it's required, really, to pay attention, to wake up the muscles around the belly button. Because if you're not having an active conversation with those muscles, what happens is they go lazy and the back gets too tight. And that's the default most people walk around in. And in fact, the process of correcting that has nothing to do with strengthening the core. This is not a strengthening activity. It's a process of developing greater powers of attentiveness, which will in fact strengthen your brain and create a greater continuity and a greater strength in the nerve pathways between the brain and those muscles that carry signals to the brain and tell those muscles what to do. You'll get a greater coordination and a greater proprioception or position sense, which is a bit more like learning how to play an instrument, really, than doing something with a repetitive kind of a process and a goal at the end of it. And I think it makes sense that we would all want to become better musicians of our core muscles.